All right, welcome back. Crew call with the Scooters today, and our friend Chris Wu from the Pittsburgh Symphony Orchestra. And we are so happy that you are with us today, and so honored that you would take time out of your day to be with us. We have a bunch of questions. And first of all, so first, thank you, because you always show up anytime you're asked. You're a friend to many neighborhood organizations, maybe many community organizations, and you always try to help where you can. So we wanted to thank you for being a part of the Tension Wolf Walk. And we have a little bit of that clip because we want to talk a little bit about the piece that you performed for them in that walk. But thank you so much for being here and for being with us.
Thank you for having me. I mean, it's always a great gift to be with you, of course. And we have to tell everybody that we met not so long ago, but I feel like we're brother and sister, like that. We're like, our organizations are like family, and it's so nice when you can connect with someone so quickly and feel a connection so fast. And I think it's just wonderful. So thanks for having me.
Well, absolutely. Yeah, Chris Wu was the name that we started hearing.
Yeah.
After Bob McCutcheon was like, I just got off the phone with Chris Wu, and I think it was like 10:30 at night or something. It was like, do you have time to talk? I was like, yeah. I was like, what are you guys talking about? So, but for years have watched you perform with the PSO. My dad, I tell this story often, but I'm very honored to be able to tell it. My dad started taking us to the symphony when we were, I don't know, 8. And once a year for our birthdays, he would take us out for a date. It was our dad date. And we would go to dinner, and then we would go to the symphony. My parents have been longtime season ticket holders of the PSO, and sit down front in row J, and fell in love with sitting and watching just the magnificence of what is the PSO. So it's so I've watched you for years, not since I was 8.
Well, Jenny, I don't want to give up my age, but this is my 31st season, so I think you've seen me a lot on those daddy-daughter dates. But I'm so grateful to your father for taking you on those dates.
Oh, it's just amazing. So so let's start, because I did some research on your background. So you started playing violin when you were 5. And the story is that you were a little active, maybe hyperactive, and your mom found something for you to do, which was to play an instrument. And I was like, my mom tried to get me to play the piano. That was horrible. But your mom's like, violin. That's
yeah.
Well, okay, so I have to go back a little bit, because I used to tell the story of the way that I thought I learned how I started the violin, and it was completely wrong. But it's so much nicer the way that I thought of it. I thought my mom saw a bunch of people on the Donahue show. Do you remember that show, Phil Donahue? He had a bunch of Suzuki kids playing their violin, and I thought my mom saw that and wanted her son to play the violin. Okay, so I told my mom that story, and she goes, "That's not true." I go, "Well, why did I start learning how to play the violin?" She goes, "Because they offered free lessons at your school, and I was tired of having to follow you around at home." So I got started because, first of all, I'm Chinese, and my family, likes to save money here and there. And so the way that we do that is to get free violin lessons at the school. So my mom wanted me to learn how to play the violin, and my father loved classical music. And that's where I think I really got it, is that my dad, he did not spend a lot of money. I mean, for us to go, you said you had a daddy-daughter date. For us to go to Red Lobster, that was a big deal. He saved money for our school, for our education, and he saved money for classical records. And I think my mom is holding 2,000 classical records at her house for me to take after she passes on.
Oh my gosh.
Was there anyone in your family who played an instrument, though, or were you the first?
No, I was the first. And the ironic thing is, they didn't want me to become a classical musician. they just wanted me to have it, like most parents, you want to give your kids an opportunity to try different things, whether it's sports or music or dance. There's so many wonderful things and disciplines for kids to learn. But when I started getting serious, and I really enjoyed playing the violin and playing for people and doing well in competitions, they were like, no, you can be an engineer or a doctor, but just do that for fun. Just do that on the side.
It is incredible. So did you grow up in Pittsburgh? Where did you grow up?
So I was born in New Jersey, but I was 3 months when we moved, and I moved to Chicago, and I started learning in Chicago. We spent about 4 or 5 years in Chicago, and then most of my childhood was just up the road in Rochester, New York.
Oh, okay.
So I really consider Rochester my home.
And you went to school at Eastman? Am I correct about that?
The Eastman School of Music is the music school of the University of Rochester. So I stayed close to home. My teacher did not want me to audition for other schools. He wanted to continue teaching me. So I basically had one school that I applied to.
When did you decide you wanted to go into classical music as a profession? Was that something you decided quickly, or was that later in education?
I did okay in school. I did A's and B's, and I loved playing for people. That's the one thing, is that I always loved playing for people. I hated to practice. And I have to admit that I still just kind of don't love practicing now. But my father passed away when I was 14. And he said there were 3 things that he said to me. He had cancer from asbestos as a chemical engineer. But there were 3 things. I was laying in bed, just laying in bed with him. And he said, look, I want you to do 3 things for me. Number 1, you have to take care of your mom. And number 2, you have to finish your education. And number 3, you have to do something that you love so it'll never feel like work. And so when I went to school, and, I always tell that, I remind my mom, I go, how am I doing on number 1? I got to make sure that I'm taking good care of you, because number 2 is complete. And number 3 is definitely, I love playing. But I did well in some competitions, and my teacher sort of encouraged me to go to music school. And there wasn't anything really that was dying to do. So I went there, and I kind of socialized for the first 4 years. And in the 5th year, I had a girlfriend who sort of looked at me and said, what are you going to do with your life? All you're doing is hanging around, talking to people. And it kind of ticked me off. And so I practiced 6 to 7 hours a day, every day from that time that she told me. And I'm glad she said that to me.
Now, what did that do? Being a boy, losing your dad at 14, how did that shape your scope? I mean, he set parameters for you, but how did that shape you?
Well, and again, this is part of the Chinese culture, is to basically, whatever emotions you have, you kind of sweep it under the carpet, and you say, you put on a strong face and you say everything is fine. And so later on in life, I kind of had to deal with it a little bit more in terms of just an emotional thing, and kind of going through the grief process. So, when I'm 14, I think you don't really know what you're losing. My dad traveled quite a bit. So, after he passed away, after, a few months, I thought, okay, he's just gone. He'll just come through that door. I didn't kind of deal with it at the time. But it was incredibly emotional for me at 14. I know when it hit me the most was we were at his funeral, and my mom wanted me to play something, and I said, yeah, of course I'll do it. And we were in church singing a hymn, and I didn't hear my dad's voice, and I just broke down. And I was supposed to play right after that, and I always remember to this day my sister just squeezing my hand. I don't think I had any more blood in my hand from her just squeezing so hard, trying to make her not cry, but also to help me to get it together. By the grace of God, I got up and I played. But it really, when you say, how did it affect you? It affected me in knowing the importance of music as a healing agent, as a part of our lives, whether my daughter being born, or my father passing away, or even just during this COVID time. It's just a wonderful gift for your soul that you can really but you can use for just comfort. And in light of what's going on in the world today, I think for all of us to just sit down and take a few moments and close our eyes and listen to music would be great for all of us.
Just to settle. It's unbelievable. I appreciate you sharing that, because you can feel it in your music. Is my connection
thanks.
Weird?
It's okay.
Is it okay? Sorry.
We just hear your questions a couple of times, which is interesting. I think it's like, like mixing that we're trying to think. We have a musician on, so we're just trying some new things.
I might. It's weird.
Well, I have to say, your connection with me here, I'm looking at your interesting questions. You guys look like you're in really cool places, and I'm looking behind me, and it's so boring that I'm hoping people will just ignore what's behind me, because it drives me crazy.
No, it's all right. You have a good story to share, so it's fine.
I'm gonna put these back in. See if
yeah, I would put those back in. Oh, Jenny, you're muted.
Yep, Jenny. There we go.
There you are.
It's weird. This whole thing today has been real weird. We've been having glitchy stuff all day. It's been weird, but I have a couple questions. So you go to school. You're learning violin on a higher degree, and then you're a concert. You leave there and you become a concert master at some point. How does that happen?
Okay, so a concert master basically is for people that don't know what a concert master is, because sometimes I'm always like, what does that word mean? It's basically the concert master is the first chair violinist right next to the conductor. So if people are looking at the stage and they see the conductor, the person who's directly to his left is the concert master. And the job of the concert master is really funny, is to take over for the conductor in case something happens to the conductor, which happened to me in Germany, where a conductor had a panic attack. And he's a very dear friend of mine, David Efren. He had a panic attack. He thought he was having a heart attack. We stopped the performance for about 15 minutes. They brought a stretcher in. They carted him out, and I had to get on the podium to conduct the rest of the program, which wasn't that long. I mean, it was maybe 15 minutes. But it's something we laugh about, because he is being transported out. I mean, people are carrying him out, and he hears the music coming on, and he tells me, now, the body's not even cold and you're taking over my spot? Come on, give me a break.
How do you even become that? Like, how did you even become like second in command, let's call it?
So that was while I was in school, and we were playing a festival in Heidelberg, Germany. So I auditioned for it. And for any position that you win, whether it's concertmaster or it's in the orchestra, it is just an audition that you do before the colleagues in the orchestra and before the music director, and you play for an extended amount of time. First for 6 minutes, then for 15, and then for 30.
I would be so stressed every time thinking that was going to happen, I feel like.
Yeah, the audition process is very interesting, because the very first, when you send an application saying, okay, I want to audition for the Pittsburgh Symphony, and then they send you back a list of pieces they would like to hear you play.
Wow.
You get a time, so say, okay, you know what, Tuesday at 4:00 is your time. You get a time, you come at Tuesday, 4:00. When you get there to the hall, you pick a number. And from then on, you're just a number. So say you pick the number 16. They escort you somewhere, maybe a practice room, maybe a room just to sit until they have a practice room ready. And then they give you a practice room probably half an hour before you play. They walk you down, and they walk you onto a stage that has a sheet or a covering so they can't see who you are. So there's no discrimination. They can't hear carpet on the Heinz Hall stage. They can't hear your high heels or your shoes, and you just play in front of basically a black screen, and you're number 16. They walk out and they say, number 16, and you play for 6 minutes. And then you walk off the stage and you go to your room. And then they listen to 5 or 6 people, and then the personnel manager will come, and if they like you, then they have you in a room and they say, we'd like number 12, number 16, the rest of you can go home. So if you're not 12 or 16, you get sent home. If you're 12 or 16, you get back into a room and you prepare to play for another 15 minutes for the committee with the screen down.
Wow.
After that's over, then you walk off, and then they say, this is number 6. This was number 16 in the first round. This was Jenny Schleiper, and they have your resume. Then
you did a good job. You definitely did a good job,
yeah. And then after that's over, you go back to the room and you wait your fate, and they say, Jenny, we'd like you to come back and play for the music director. Usually it's the next day or a few weeks later. For me, it was about 3 weeks later, and you play in the hall. Nothing's out there except for the music stand and your music, and you play through whatever they want you to listen to, and then they can ask you for more. And it's probably 9 members of the orchestra, and the music director would be Manfred Honeck at this time. And you play for half an hour, and then you do the same thing. You walk out, and then you wait, and then you get talked to personally. Thank you very much for coming. Thank you. And so I was blessed in that I had no idea what the process was. So I was really green and I was a total rookie. And so Pittsburgh was my first audition. So I went and did the first thing, and then they asked me to play again, and I played again. They said, would you come back? And then I went home, and they didn't tell me anything whether or not they wanted me for the job or not. And I got a call the next day that said, we would like to invite you to be a member of the Pittsburgh Symphony. And I was 21 at the time, or 21 or 22 at the time, and I said, I'm sorry, what did you say? Because I couldn't believe it. And then they said, would you like to do that? And I said, sure, I think so. And then I started the following year officially.
Wow, what an incredible story.
Did you know at some point the first time, what was it like sitting on the stage for the first time and performing?
I couldn't play, honestly, I tell this to all my students, because I couldn't play 2 notes together. I was really struggling to play 2. I was so nervous, right?
Sure.
But on my music, I had a picture of my dad, and I had some Bible verses to just help me. And there were a couple times when I got nervous, and I just looked at the picture and the verses, and my bow just sort of God sort of took over, because I couldn't do it anymore. And it was helpful for me that I tell students, you don't feel you're not going to play your absolute best. Yes, we'd love to play our best, but that doesn't happen all the time. But it's how good your bad playing is. So if your best is here, you want your bad playing to be here, not here.
Right.
Because if it's bad, they will really bad, and sometimes it goes bad and just keeps going downhill from there.
And I hope it doesn't keep echoing, because I have a couple questions. Let me ask this. So have you ever had a doubting moment during your career?
Yes. Absolutely. My brother, who's a doctor, I was having a conversation with him, this was a few years ago, and he was doubting his skills as a doctor. And I said, I oftentimes think, when are they going to realize that I'm a complete fraud at playing the violin? Because you just have worries that what you're playing isn't so good, isn't great, isn't what people want to hear, or isn't at the technical level that it should be. So I think it's all the time, and that's why it's really good not only to keep practicing, but just to keep things playing for people, playing with other people you trust that can be hard on you, that can really keep you. I have a really dear friend in the orchestra, Ann Williams, and if people heard us rehearse, I don't know that they would, they would think that we were friends, because we'd be like, why are you doing it that way? And it's like, oh, I'm sorry, but it's sort of just someone who loves you, but knows it's just it's helping you try to get better all the time.
We have a piece.
Oh, yeah.
So Quartz, can you show a little part of this?
Here we go.
I mean, there wasn't a dry eye when we showed that. Everybody said the same thing. Who is that Chris Wu? And the piece, how you play it. I mean, some of that is taught, but that's all in your soul, beautiful. In your spirit. I mean, to play that way. And I mean, I can't even think about how do you do all of that?
And the emotion that you show. I mean, you're thinking about it, but then the emotion that you bring to the piece is unbelievable as well. That connection that you feel, like, that's incredible.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. That's very kind of you. I really appreciate that. So there's a story behind this. If you guys, I feel like I'm telling so many stories. I'm sorry.
We like it. That's why you're here.
The story behind this is my wife and I had a real hard time getting. We wanted, when we were married, we were like, oh, we'll have 3 or 4 or 5 kids, and she was a widow and had a child of her own, and I adopted him, Wesley, and so I have and then we wanted to have another child, or 2 or 3, and she had a miscarriage, and we sort of had kind of given up, trying. We were looking into adopting, and then she got pregnant, and so of course we said, by God's grace, we're pregnant, and it's a girl. So of course we named her Grace. Aww. And so while she was pregnant, and we would play Amazing Grace for her almost every day. I can't say every day, but almost every day. So that when she was born, she came out and she was crying, and I had my violin in the delivery room, and I started playing, and she stopped crying immediately.
I'm gonna start crying myself.
So. So again, I tell a story about the power of music, but also how it starts early. And I mean, I'd love it to say my daughter's a musician. My daughter's not a musician. She loves music, and she loves hearing that song. She loves hearing Amazing Grace. But each time I play it, I just, it's sort of a prayer for me, but it's also a dedication to my daughter. It's a whole lot of things that while I'm playing, I'm not necessarily thinking about the notes, but I'm just thinking about what the words and what the music means to me.
Wow. That's a beautiful story.
Your playing is unreal and unparalleled. And I think anybody that knows you puts those two things together, because you have such talent, but you have such joy, and it's precious. It's just, you come into a space and there's just this energy and this vibrance, and we just appreciate it so much. We appreciate you so much and your talent.
Oh, thank you.
It's amazing. I'm going to ask about your violin.
Okay.
Your violin's, it's a couple days old. I mean, I think it's from, 17 something. Am I correct?
Wow.
Can you talk about using an instrument that was built hundreds of years ago?
Yeah, so my father bought me my first violin for $450.
Wow.
And it was an Andrew H. Potter, and we bought it, and I was playing it in school, and it wasn't very good. And finally my teacher said, you really need to buy a new violin. He loaned me his violin, his second violin for a little while, but he was like, you need to buy a violin. So, buying a violin is not like, I'll just go down the road and, pick up a violin. You don't go to Home Depot and pick up a violin. You got to go through the whole process of like buying a house. How much can you spend? What do you want in it? What are the kinds of things you like to see? And so it was a long process. And I always say I'm so grateful to my mom for making me practice when I was a kid, but also for trusting me enough to buy a violin for me that, she said, how much do you need to buy a violin? And I said, I don't know. And I started at $10,000. Now this is 1984. Wow. And it ended up, the violin that I bought was $35,000 in 1984. And it's a 1727 Galliano violin, Niccolo Galliano violin, that when I played it, I was like, oh, this is amazing. I had no idea how much it was or anything like that, but I played it and I was like, oh, this is amazing. I had my teacher there and another professor was there when I was trying violins, but I had up to that point probably played 60 different violins. And it's like voices. Everyone's a little bit different. And you have to try to remember that this sort of will become your voice. People don't want to hear you talk, they want to hear you play. And it took a long time to find it, but I have loved it ever since we got it in 1984.
That's incredible.
It's amazing. Do you have a special name for it? Does it have a name? I name everything. I just wonder.
You know what? That's a great question, Jenny. No, I don't. I should name it. Nicky or something. I don't, or Gag or something. I should name something, but I don't have a name for it.
Oh.
And I mean, you have a precious piece of something that's an extension to you. Do you feel the most comfortable when you are playing?
Yes and no. There are times where I feel like, actually, when I was playing Amazing Grace, when I played that, I do feel like that's it's a very comfortable thing. There are times when it feels just completely foreign. Like, it's like, have I really been doing this for 50 years? And you feel, but then I sort of equate that with sometimes as we get older, we wake up with backaches and we wake up with shoulder pain and we wake up with different things with our body that feels not quite right. And so I just think it's a gift to be able to have something that you can share in a way where whatever words I could ever use would not be able to express the feelings that I have.
And one last question. Oh, my echo. So
it means it's a good question.
It is a good question. I don't think people know the hours that you put in. Can you give a little context around the hours that go into being at the level that you're at?
You have to practice every day. I mean, growing up, I certainly did. I mean, there are days that I've missed early during this COVID thing, but you have to practice and you have to build upon. And it's like anything, it's work. Hopefully when you're on stage, it's not work. You're just letting go and just enjoying the moment of expressing what you feel. But what is it? They say 10,000 hours. How many hours do you have to put in to become a master of something? I was thinking about the number of concerts I've played over the years, and it's over 30,000 concerts. So I'm sure the number of hours that I've practiced to get to that point is 5 times that. You know, I mean, it's not, it would have been great. It would be a good experiment to find out from someone or to have them keep track of every hour that they practice from when they started. Would be interesting to find out how much someone practices. But, and the other thing is, even the hours that you put in, sometimes they're bad practice hours. Sometimes you're not thinking. I try to get my kids to be more efficient in their practicing so that they're thinking more, maybe not practicing more hours, but thinking more while they practice so that when they get on that stage, they have that concentration.
Right. Well, thank you. Thank you for,
Seriously.
and thank you for being here today with my weird echo. I don't know what's happening.
It's okay.
No, thanks for having me. This was like the fastest 30 minutes. I hope I didn't talk too much, but this was the fastest 30 minutes of my life.
No, we'll get you back. We have more questions.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris.
You're welcome. Great to see you. Great to see you both.
Thank you.
Thank you.